Hello, everyone. I am the sleep storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you from and what time are you listening? Now get comfortable and relax. The night was thick with enchantment. A quiet whisper threading through the ancient stones of Hogwarts. The castle stood tall against the velvety darkness, its spires piercing the sky like watchful sentinels. A hush had settled over its hallowed halls, the kind of silence that was not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of something unseen, something waiting. Beneath this heavy stillness, the world shifted in ways unnoticed by those tucked safely within their dormitories. Yet outside, in the heart of the forbidden forest, the air hummed with anticipation. The towering trees, their bark gnarled with the weight of centuries, stood motionless, as if holding their breath. Moonlight, pale and spectral, slipped between their tangled branches, painting silver patterns upon the forest floor. But something else lurked beneath the shadows, something older than the roots that twisted deep into the earth. A presence had awoken. It began with a flicker, a glow that pulsed with unnatural rhythm in a secluded clearing untouched by time. The soil trembled, not from the wind, but from something unseen moving beneath it. Then, as if exhaling after centuries of silence, the ground split open, and from its depths, a sigil emerged. It burned, its edges shifting like liquid fire, as though the very air recoiled from its presence. The glow cast eerie reflections upon the trees, their trunks stretching long and distorted like ghostly figures frozen in silent reverence. At the clearing's edge, concealed by the gloom, the centaurs watched. Their silvered eyes, sharp with ancestral knowledge, flickered with unease. They had seen signs before, omens written in the constellations, prophecies whispered through time, but never had they witnessed something like this. The sigil did not belong to mortal magic. It belonged to something far beyond their understanding. The leader among them, Fenez, stepped forward, his hooves silent against the damp earth. The glow of the sigil reflected in his gaze, turning his expression unreadable. He knew what had to be done. Before the first light of dawn could reach the castle walls, he turned, his pace measured but urgent, heading toward Hogwarts. Someone needed to know. Someone needed to prepare. Unbeknownst to him, within the towering fortress of stone and spells, Professor McGonagall stirred. Long before Fenez's arrival, she had felt it, the shift in the air, the heaviness pressing against the ancient walls of her chambers. It was an unease that had no shape, no explanation, yet it wrapped around her like an unseen shroud. Rising from her bed, her night robes whispering against the stone floor, she moved toward the window. The grounds stretched far beyond her sight, shrouded in mist curling like fingers over the lake's surface. Everything appeared as it should, yet something was undeniably wrong. She could sense it in the way the castle itself seemed to breathe differently, as though it too recognized the disturbance. A knock at her door cut through the silence. She straightened, gripping the window sill for a moment before composing herself. "Enter," she called, her voice steady. The door creaked open, revealing Fenez, his massive frame framed by the torchlight outside. The flickering glow cast long shadows, making him seem even more otherworldly. He bowed his head slightly, his silver mane shifting with emotion. "Headmistress," he said, his voice as deep as the forests from which he came. "The stars have sent a warning." McGonagall did not reply immediately. She had learned long ago that when a centaur spoke of omens, their words were never wasted. Instead, she met his gaze with quiet resolve. "What have they shown you?" His sharp blue eyes darkened with something she could only describe as dread. "A sigil," he said, "in the heart of the forbidden forest. It was not drawn by mortal hands, nor was it written with ink or wand. It was called into being by something far older than us." The breath in her chest stilled. "A summoning sigil." The weight of his words settled over her, heavy and cold. Hogwarts had seen many things: wars, curses, ancient evils that had been defeated and returned again. But this was different. This was not an echo of something past. This was a door being opened. "What is it summoning?" she asked, though deep down, she was not sure she wanted the answer. Fenez turned his gaze toward the window, toward the forest where the sigil burned unseen. Something that should never wake. Far from the castle, in the winding alleyways of Diagon Alley, a lone figure moved through the shadows. He walked with purpose, his cloak pulled tight against the crisp night air. Theodore Nott had never liked being seen, and tonight was no exception. He moved past the golden glow of shop windows, past the idle murmurs of late-night wanderers, until he reached a door few ever noticed. It was old, its wood warped with age, bearing no sign to indicate what lay within. To most, it was unremarkable, but Theodore knew better. He pushed it open, the faint chime of a bell ringing somewhere beyond the dimly lit entrance. The scent of parchment and ink mixed with something more elusive, the smell of knowledge left untouched for too long. From the gloom between the towering shelves, a voice rasped. "Not." Theodore turned toward the sound, his expression unreadable. "I need a book." A dry chuckle echoed through the shop. "I have many. One in particular." He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "On the Deathbringers." The air seemed to shift, an invisible weight settling over the space. The shopkeeper, an old man with hands stained by centuries of ink, did not move for a long moment. Then, finally, he sighed, stepping behind the counter. His fingers traced the spines of books stacked high, pausing on one so worn with age that its title had all but vanished. "No one speaks of the Deathbringers," the old man murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "And those who do rarely like what they find." Theodore held his gaze, unwavering. "I don't have a choice." The shopkeeper studied him for a long moment, then, with reluctant reverence, pulled a battered volume from the shelf, setting it down upon the counter. It was thick with dust, the weight of it seeming heavier than mere paper and ink. Theodore reached for it, but the old man's hand pressed against the cover. "Be certain you wish to find it." His pulse was steady as he met the shopkeeper's gaze. "I already have." Back at Hogwarts, McGonagall traced the sigil's shape on parchment. Its edges burned into the very fabric of the page. The tea at her desk had long since gone cold, forgotten. There was something deeply unsettling about the way the ink refused to dry, as if the symbol itself resisted permanence, shifting just beyond comprehension. She turned to the bookshelf behind her, fingers brushing over ancient tomes. And then she felt it, not sound, not movement, but a presence. Something watching, waiting. With a quiet breath, she pulled a book from the shelf, its title long faded. When she opened it, a single phrase glistened across the first page, written in ink that shimmered like reflections in dark water. "The harbinger of fear has woken," and somewhere, deep within the forbidden forest, the sigil burned brighter. It had been seen, it had been read, and it had been answered. "Hash hash," you said. "Next." Hash hash, ChatGPT said. Part 2. The castle held its breath. The torches that lined the corridors flickered, their flames stretching unnaturally, casting shadows that did not match the movements of the stone walls around them. The very air seemed thicker, as if something unseen pressed against the ancient foundations of Hogwarts, a presence lingering just beyond the edge of perception. It was not fear, not yet, but it was something close, something waiting. McGonagall stood before her desk, the book still open before her, its ink gleaming like fresh-cut wounds in the dim light. "The harbinger of fear has woken." The words did not shift, did not blur, yet she wished they would, wished for some trick of the eye, some mistake of her own understanding. But she knew better. Magic this old did not make mistakes. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was not hesitant, not hurried, but it carried weight. She had been expecting this. "Enter." The door opened, and Hermione Granger stepped inside. A thick tome clutched tightly to her chest. Her hair, still wild with its untamed curls, framed her face, though her expression had changed from the eager brilliance of her school days. Time had sharpened her features, carved wisdom into the lines around her eyes. The hunger for knowledge still burned there, but there was something else now, something heavier. Hermione hesitated only briefly before stepping forward, setting her own book down beside the one on McGonagall's desk. The firelight cast long shadows over its worn cover. "You recognize it," McGonagall said, watching her closely. Hermione didn't answer at first. Instead, she ran her fingers absently over the spine of the book, as if grounding herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "I came across the name once, years ago after the war, when I was researching old magical records." Her words were careful, placed like pieces in a puzzle only she could see. But it was barely a whisper, a name buried so deeply that even the most comprehensive archives had nothing concrete. just fragments. McGonagall folded her hands before her. And what did these fragments tell you? Hermione's fingers tightened against the cover of her book. That he wasn't just a sorcerer, if he was ever human to begin with. Her gaze flickered toward the page before them, toward the words that refused to fade. They called him the Harbinger of Fear. McGonagall exhaled slowly. But beyond that, the records were empty, as if someone had erased him from history. The fire crackled in the heavy silence that followed. The sound of burning would impossibly loud against the hush of the room. McGonagall looked back down at the book before her. It felt wrong, unnatural, as if she were staring at something not meant to be read. And yet, here he is again, she murmured, reappearing when the world had long forgotten his name. Hermione swallowed. Maybe the world was never meant to forget. A chill traced its way down McGonagall's spine, though she did not show it. The castle had seen many things, survived many horrors. But this was different. This was not history returning in echoes. This was something waiting, something responding. Finally, she gestured to the chair across from her. Sit, Hermione. Tell me what you know. Hermione hesitated for only a moment before obeying. The weight of the conversation settled over her shoulders as she placed her hands on the desk, steadying herself. When I was searching the ministry's archives, I found something peculiar. Old court records, barely legible, documenting the trials of wizards who had practiced magic that was forbidden even in their time. Dark rituals, not magic that granted power, but magic that fed on fear itself. McGonagall's lips pressed into a thin line. Fear magic. Hermione nodded grimly. And in those records, there was a single mention of a name. Once. It was barely there, almost as if the scribe hesitated to write it at all. But it stood out to me because of the way it was written. Her fingers curled slightly against the wooden desk. It wasn't a name in the traditional sense. It was a warning. McGonagall's throat tightened. What did it say? Hermione's voice was barely above a whisper. He does not die. He only waits. The words lingered in the air, heavy as iron. McGonagall felt something cold settle into her chest. Some fears could be conquered, some evils vanquished. But those words did not speak of defeat. They spoke of patience, of inevitability. She looked at Hermione, her sharp gaze unreadable. Do you believe this has something to do with the sigil in the forest? Yes, Hermione swallowed. And I think it's more than just a warning. It's a message. She hesitated before continuing, the weight of her own words sinking into her bones. Someone wants us to know that he's waking up. McGonagall's fingers ghosted over the open book, the ink still glistening despite the cool air of the room. Magic did not behave this way, not unless it wanted to be seen. Then we must prepare for the worst. Outside, the wind prowled through the corridors of Hogwarts, slipping through arrow slits and forgotten cracks, whispering through the great halls. It carried the scent of damp earth from the forbidden forest, the crisp bite of autumn leaves, and and something colder still. The bitter trace of magic stirred from its slumber, far beyond the castle walls, deep in the ministry of magic. Another figure moved through the shadows. The halls were nearly empty at this hour, the enchanted chandeliers burning low, their golden light flickering as if disturbed by something unseen. Theodore not walked with purpose, his robes flowing behind him as he approached the black door at the heart of the ministry's most guarded secrets. He had been here before, long ago, when he was too young to understand the weight of the knowledge hidden within these walls. But now, he was here for answers. The Department of Mysteries did not open itself easily. The door was smooth, unmarked, giving no indication of what lay behind it. Theodore pressed his palm against the cold stone, feeling the faint pulse of magic beneath his skin. The door did not resist, nor did it welcome him. It simply acknowledged. He stepped inside. The hall of prophecy stretched before him. Endless shelves stacked with glass orbs, each one holding the weight of foresight, the voices of those who had glimpsed too far into the future. The air smelled of parchment, of candle smoke long since burned out, of something ancient and undisturbed. He moved between the towering shelves, his fingers tracing the edges of the fragile orbs, searching. He had always been drawn to the past, to the whispers buried beneath layers of forgotten history. His father had taught him to read between the lines, to see what others ignored. And tonight, he was certain of one thing. Somewhere in these archives, the truth had been written long ago. A prophecy that had been ignored, a warning that had never been heeded. And if what he suspected was true, then the Harbinger had not been waiting. It had been calling. Hash hash, you said. Next, hash hash, ChatGPT said. Part 3. The Hall of Prophecy stretched before Theodore in an endless labyrinth of towering shelves, each lined with fragile glass orbs. Their misty interiors swirled with secrets spoken long ago, foretellings that had outlived the lips that uttered them. The Ministry of Magic prided itself on controlling knowledge, on sealing away the dangerous and the unknown. But standing here, beneath the flickering glow of the enchanted chandeliers, Theodore could feel it. This was not a place of control. It was a graveyard of futures, a place where warnings had been stored instead of heeded. He moved carefully, his fingers trailing over the labels that curled with age. Most bore names long forgotten, wizards and witches, whose destinies had been sealed long before he was born. But he was searching for something older, something deliberately hidden. The further he walked, the colder the air became. It wasn't the chill of stone or time, but something deeper, something that pressed against his skin like unseen fingers. Then, at the very edge of the hall, where the dust lay thickest, where time itself seemed hesitant to intrude, he found it. The writing was faded, barely legible, ink cracked with age. But when his eyes adjusted to the script, his breath caught. The Harbinger shall wake when the world has forgotten his name. The prophecy pulsed faintly, a single ripple of light passing through its glass prison. Theodore swallowed, his pulse steady despite the ice now coiling in his veins. The words had weight. This was not just a warning, it was a promise. Before he could react, a voice cut through the silence. "You shouldn't be here." He turned sharply, his grip tightening around his wand, though he did not raise it. The dim glow of the chandeliers caught on a familiar face. Hermione Granger. She stood at the threshold of the corridor, a thick book clutched tightly in one hand, her wand in the other. Her expression was unreadable, but Theodore recognized the sharp calculation in her eyes, the way her mind was already piecing together the puzzle laid out before them. "Neither should you," he said evenly. Hermione exhaled slowly, stepping forward. The space between them was vast, and yet impossibly small, as if the weight of the past had been condensed into this singular moment. "You're looking for something," she said, her voice quieter now. "Something more than just knowledge." Theodore didn't deny it. Instead, he gestured toward the orb still cradled in its iron stand. "It seems I've found it." Hermione's gaze flickered toward the prophecy, and as she read the words, a shiver passed through her. She had spent years uncovering hidden truths, navigating labyrinths of secrecy and misinformation. But this was different. This was deliberate. "The Harbinger," she murmured, tasting the name on her tongue like a long-buried relic. She turned to Theodore, something unreadable in her expression. "You think someone has already woken him?" Theodore met her gaze, his expression grim. "I think we're too late." Silence settled between them, thick and unyielding. The torches overhead flickered, their glow stretching shadows long and thin across the stone floor. Hermione's fingers curled slightly against the book she carried. "There's something else," she said, her voice careful, measured. "When I was searching through the ministry archives, I found a record, a trial, centuries old, condemning a group of wizards who practiced forbidden magic. But their crime wasn't power." Her throat tightened. "It was fear." Theodore studied her. "Fear magic." She nodded. "The kind that doesn't just feed on emotions, but shapes them, binds them, makes them real." Theodore let out a slow breath, glancing back at the prophecy orb. "And now, after all these years, we have a summoning sigil burning in the forbidden forest. A prophecy that speaks of an awakening, and a history that someone tried to erase." Hermione swallowed, not erase. She turned back to him, her voice quieter now. "Hide." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The realization settled between them like an unspoken agreement, a shared understanding of what had to come next. And then the prophecy orb pulsed. The mist within it shifted, coiling like a living thing. And for the first time in centuries, a voice, low, ancient, and echoing with forgotten power, spoke from within its fragile shell. "The veil between fear and flesh shall thin. He does not die. He only waits." And when the world no longer fears his name, he shall step through once more. The voice faded, leaving behind only silence. Hermione and Theodore stood motionless, the weight of the words pressing down upon them like a storm cloud ready to break. Finally, Hermione exhaled, steadying herself. There's only one place that might have answers. Theodore raised a brow. The Department of Mysteries. She shook her head. No, the Department of Mysteries is what the Ministry lets people see. She hesitated. There's something beneath it, a place even the unspeakables don't talk about. Theodore studied her for a long moment before sighing. I suppose we're going to find it then. Hermione gave a small, humorless smile. We don't have a choice. The walls of the Ministry of Magic seemed to stretch endlessly as they moved through the lower levels, descending deeper than most ever dared to go. The corridors here were different, untouched by the routine footsteps of Ministry workers. The torches flickered strangely, as if reluctant to burn, casting only the faintest light against the stone. This place is wrong, Theodore murmured, his fingers resting near his wand. Hermione didn't argue. She could feel it too. The further they went, the heavier the air became, thick with something that did not belong to time as they knew it. It was not just darkness. It was absence. And then, at the very end of the corridor, they found it. The door was unlike anything they had ever seen. An expanse of iron carved with symbols that pulsed faintly, as if they were not engraved, but alive. The edges of the door did not meet the stone walls. Instead, they seemed to shift, the space around them bending unnaturally, as if reality itself struggled to contain what lay beyond. Hermione swallowed. This is it. Theodore stepped forward, brushing his fingers over the engravings. The metal was ice gold, but not in the way of ordinary steel. It was the cold of something that did not belong in this world, the absence of warmth rather than its opposite. It's not locked, he murmured. Not in the traditional sense. Hermione frowned. Then how do we open it? Theodore studied the carvings, his eyes narrowing slightly. It's not a matter of force. It's recognition. This magic isn't meant to keep people out. It's waiting for something or someone. Hermione hesitated, then slowly reached out, pressing her palm against the cold metal. For a moment, nothing happened, and then the door shifted, not like a door should not creaking or groaning beneath the weight of time, but simply ceasing to be. Beyond it, darkness stretched endlessly. Theodore let out a slow breath. Well, he muttered, that's not ominous at all. Hermione tightened her grip on her wand. We didn't come all this way to turn back now. He chuckled lightly, shaking his head. Gryffindors, always so dramatic. She shot him a look. And Slytherins, always pretending they're not just as curious. A smirk ghosted across his lips. Then, without another word, they stepped into the unknown, and as the darkness swallowed them, the air around them stirred, shifting like the breath of something vast and waiting. #, you said. Next, #, ChatGPT said. Part 4. The darkness did not merely surround them, it consumed them. It was not the absence of light, but something deeper, something vast and old, pressing against their skin like an unseen tide. Hermione tightened her grip on her wand, but the soft glow at its tip barely cut through the void. Beside her, Theodore moved cautiously, his own wand casting a dim, silvery shimmer against the endless black. "This isn't just a hidden chamber," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's something else." Hermione swallowed, her pulse steady but rapid. "It's a place outside of place." She didn't know how she knew, but the moment the words left her lips, she was certain of their truth. The air was different here, heavier, as if thick with something that had been waiting for them. They moved forward, their footsteps silent against a floor too smooth, too seamless, as if it had never been carved by human hands. There were no walls, no visible edges to this space, only a deep, stretching nothingness that pulsed with the slow, measured breath of something unseen. And then a shift. A single slit of red light flickered in the distance, narrow and sharp, like the eye of something just beginning to stir. It did not blink. It did not waver. It simply watched. Hermione inhaled sharply. "It knows we're here." Theodore stiffened beside her. "It was waiting for us." The words settled in the air like a cold weight, pressing against them from all sides. They had come seeking answers, but the truth coiled in the unseen corners of this space, waiting to reveal itself. Slowly, they moved forward. The red light remained distant, unwavering. And yet, with every step they took, the space around them seemed to shift, as if the fabric of reality was bending, changing, drawing them towards something inevitable. And then the voice came. It was not sound. It did not pass through the air or vibrate against their ears. It reached into their minds directly, bypassing language, bypassing understanding, pressing into the deepest parts of their thoughts, like something that had always been there, waiting to be heard. "You have come," Hermione gasped, stumbling back a step, her breath catching in her throat. Theodore exhaled sharply, his grip tightening on his wand. The presence did not move, but it was asterisk movement. A slow, curling shift in the darkness, an ancient awareness stretching after too long a sleep. Hermione forced herself to speak. "Who?" she swallowed, steadying herself. "Who are you?" The air trembled. The red slit in the void pulsed faintly, as though considering. Not who, what. The words pressed against her skull like a weight, filling the space inside her head with something vast and unknowable. She gathered her courage, exhaling through her nose. "Then, what are you?" There was a silence that was not silence at all. It stretched, long and patient, as if testing them. And then, the first fear, Hermione's stomach turned. The words echoed inside her, reverberating in her very bones. She had faced war. she had faced creatures born of nightmares, magic twisted and dark. But this was something else. Theodore's voice was quieter now, edged with something unreadable. "You're the Harbinger." The red light pulsed again, slow and deliberate. "I am what they made me." Hermione's mind raced. The Harbinger of fear, a being erased from history, its name buried so deeply that even the most comprehensive archives held only whispers. And yet, here it was, asterisk, not forgotten, only waiting. She forced herself to think, to pull knowledge from the depths of her mind. The prophecy said you would wake when the world forgot your name. The voice in her mind shifted, something almost like amusement curling at its edges. Asterisk, no, child. It said I would wake when the world no longer feared my name. The weight of those words sank into her, heavy and inescapable. The prophecy had not been a warning. It had been an asterisk, lock, asterisk. For centuries, people had feared the Harbinger, whatever it was. That fear had been its prison, binding it within the spaces between existence, keeping it from stepping through. But time had worn that fear away. People had stopped speaking of it, stopped remembering. And in that forgetting, the chains had weakened. Hermione's breath came faster now. Someone summoned you. Asterisk, no. Someone merely saw the door and opened it. Her blood ran cold. The sigil in the forbidden forest. The presence pressing against the very foundations of Hogwarts. This was not the asterisk, beginning asterisk of something. This was the end of something that had been holding it back. Beside her, Theodore remained still, his mind working through the same realization. And now you're free. The red light pulsed, slow and steady. Not yet. Hermione's pulse hammered in her ears. Not yet. She didn't dare ask what that meant. Instead, she looked around the space, the endless, stretching black, the way the air itself waited asterisk. "What is this place?" she asked. The voice rumbled inside her skull. It was a wound. Now it is a door. She turned sharply toward Theodore. The ministry didn't seal the Harbinger away. His jaw tightened. They removed him, not locked him in, not buried him beneath layers of protection. They had cut him out asterisk of reality itself, exiling him to a place that did not exist asterisk. A wound in the fabric of the world, where fear could no longer reach him. But time had healed the wound, and now, standing here, they had reopened it. The air pulsed again. Hermione felt it asterisk, a shift, something stirring beneath the surface of this void. She turned back toward the red slit of light, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at the edges of her mind. "We need to leave." Theodore exhaled through his nose, jaw clenched. "And go where?" Her fingers curled around her wand. "There has to be an exit." "There is none." The words settled over them like iron. Theodore's expression darkened. "Then why let us in?" A long silence followed, and then the voice, calm, unshaken. Asterisk, knowing asterisk, because you are the ones who will finish what was started. Hermione's stomach clenched. She could asterisk feel it now. The way the presence in this place was not bound by time or space. It had always known they would come. You opened the door. You will not leave until it is closed, or until I step through. Her throat went dry. They had not simply asterisk discovered the Harbinger. They had become part of its awakening. She turned to Theodore, her voice barely above a whisper. We have to find a way to seal it again. His eyes flickered toward the red slit in the darkness, unreadable. And if we can't, Hermione forced herself to meet his gaze. Then the world will remember fear. A slow, curling shift passed through the void around them. And as the red light pulsed, stronger this time, brighter, they knew. Time was running out. # you said. Next part, BNA KR2. Or story, MA SPACES. Ziada Naidu Cam SY KAM spaces. Use crow or paragraph ma BNA KR2. # ChatGPT said. Part 5. The darkness pressed against them, thick and heavy, as if the air itself was solid. Hermione's heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she forced herself to remain steady. The Harbinger's words echoed in her mind, cold and unshaken. * you opened the door. You will not leave until it is closed, or until I step through. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a trap, one set long before they ever arrived. Theodore's gaze flickered over the shifting void, his fingers tightening around his wand. If the ministry removed him from existence, there had to be a way they did it. A spell, a ritual, something. Hermione swallowed, her mind racing. If they found a way to exile him, they must have recorded it somewhere. Magic like that doesn't just happen. It requires intention. Her thoughts spun through history, through everything she had ever studied about forbidden magic, erased knowledge, and the limitations of power. We need to find the original spell. Theodore exhaled sharply. And where exactly do you suggest we look? This place isn't a library, Granger. There aren't bookshelves hiding in the void. He wasn't wrong. There was nothing here, no walls, no floors, only the endless black stretching in all directions. And yet, the Harbinger had been trapped here. The spell had left its mark somewhere. Magic leaves traces, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Even when it fades, even when it's forgotten, it leaves something behind. She raised her wand, its glow still pitiful against the consuming dark, and forced herself to focus. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, ***, a shift. The space around them trembled, and faint lines of dull silver light rippled outward beneath their feet, tracing invisible shapes across the floor, *** runes. Ancient, tangled, written in a language she had only ever seen in the deepest, most restricted texts. The remnants of the spell that had once sealed the Harbinger away. Theodore's eyes darkened. Well, that's interesting. Hermione barely heard him. She crouched down, running her fingers just above the surface of the glowing symbols, her breath shallow. The energy here was old, asterisk, very asterisk old, and incomplete. The spell is damaged, she said, voice tight. Something breaking it apart. That's why the Harbinger is waking up. The red slit in the darkness pulsed again. The air vibrated with an unseen force pressing against her skull. You cannot hold what does not wish to be held. The words weren't a threat, they were a statement of fact. Hermione clenched her jaw. You were never meant to leave this place. A pause. Then, asterisk, that is not for you to decide. Theodore stepped closer, his voice quieter now, measured. But someone already did. A long time ago. He glanced at the runes, his expression sharp with calculation. If this spell was cast to remove you, then it should be possible to reinforce it. Hermione nodded. If we can reactivate it, we might be able to close the door before it's too late. The darkness asterisk stirred. Too late. The voice curled through their minds, an echo that did not belong to the present. You assume time still belongs to you. The runes flickered. The silver light trembled, and for the first time, Hermione felt something pushing back. The spell was old, yes, but something else was unraveling it. Asterisk, something deliberate. The sigil, she whispered, realization hitting her like ice. The one in the forbidden forest. It wasn't just a sign of his awakening. It was an asterisk, anchorer, asterisk. A way to pull him back. Theodore cursed under his breath. Which means someone didn't just open the door, they're holding it open. Hermione's mind raced. If the sigil was keeping the barrier weak, then they had to find a way to sever it, to break the connection before the Harbinger fully stepped through. But time was slipping, the pressure in the air growing heavier. The red light burned brighter now, stretching wider, and the presence behind it shifted, asterisk, closer. Fear is an open door. Hermione's breath hitched. The words did not carry malice, nor did they need to. The truth in them was enough. Fear was the lock. Fear had been the only thing holding the Harbinger back for centuries. And now that fear had faded, replaced by curiosity, by doubt, by the arrogance of those who thought history could be forgotten. Asterisk, the lock was breaking. The runes beneath them dimmed, flickering weakly. The spell was asterisk, failing. She turned to Theodore, urgency tightening her voice. We have to break the sigil. If we don't, this barrier is going to collapse, and he will step through. Theodore hesitated only for a second, then nodded. Then we need to get out of here. Now. But the moment the words left his lips, the void moved. It did not shift as a living thing would, nor did it crumble like stone. It simply, asterisk, changed, asterisk, folding in ways reality was never meant to bend. And then, asterisk, the door was gone. Hash, you said. Next, hash, ChatGPT said. Part 6. The darkness asterisk closed asterisk around them, shifting like something alive, something aware. The door through which they had entered had vanished, leaving only an endless void stretching in all directions. Hermione's breath quickened as she turned in place, wand raised, searching for any sign of an exit. There was none. They were trapped. The red slit of light pulsed ahead of them, slow and deliberate, as if asterisk watching. Theodore exhaled sharply, his jaw tight. I'm guessing running isn't an option. Hermione ignored the fear clawing at her ribs. There's always a way out. The runes beneath them flickered again, dimmer now, their glow barely holding against the overwhelming pressure of the void. The asterisk spell, asterisk, was failing. She could feel it. The Harbinger was asterisk pulling against it, testing its limits, unraveling it thread by thread. You cannot close a door that has already been opened. The voice was inside them, pressing against the edges of their thoughts. Hermione gritted her teeth. You were locked away for a reason. A pause. Then asterisk asterisk. And yet, here you stand. Proof that nothing stays buried forever. A asterisk pulse asterisk asterisk rippled through the space, and the void shifted again. This time, Hermione felt it, not just movement, but asterisk intention. Something beyond sight, beyond understanding, was stirring beneath the surface of the dark. Theodore took a slow step forward, his gaze locked onto the shifting space before them. If you wanted to step through, you would have done it already, he murmured. His voice was measured, but Hermione could hear the sharp edge of calculation behind it. You're waiting for something. The Harbinger did not deny it. Hermione's breath caught. He wasn't just breaking free, he was being pulled free. The sigil in the forbidden forest wasn't just a sign of his awakening. It was an invitation, a summoning. Someone was holding the door open from the other side. She turned to Theodore, her voice low, urgent. Whoever cast that sigil, whoever called him back, they're the key to stopping this. His eyes flickered with understanding. We need to break the link. Before Hermione could respond, the air around them collapsed. Not in the way a room might crumble, but in a way that shouldn't have been possible. The void bent inward, folding in on itself, and suddenly they were asterisk asterisk falling. The sensation was silent, weightless, like slipping through water with no surface, no bottom. Hermione gasped, clutching at nothing as her stomach lurched. And then, asterisk asterisk impact. She hit solid ground with a force that sent pain jolting through her limbs. Theodore landed beside her, rolling with the momentum before coming to a sharp stop. The air was different here, asterisk asterisk, thick, damp, real. The oppressive weight of the void was gone, replaced by a deep, pulsing hum that resonated beneath the stone. She pushed herself up, her hands pressing into what felt like asterisk asterisk old marble. And when she lifted her head, she froze. They were in an asterisk chamber. Massive stone pillars stretched high into the darkness, their surfaces engraved with the same ancient runes they had seen in the void. The walls curved inward, enclosing them in a space that felt asterisk asterisk ancient. untouched. Dim torches lined the far edges of the room, their weak flames casting flickering shadows that seemed to move on their own. At the center of the chamber, a pedestal stood, and upon it, a book. Theodore let out a slow breath beside her. That doesn't scream ominous at all. Hermione barely heard him. She was already moving, drawn toward the pedestal, as if something unseen was calling her. The book was massive, its leather cover cracked with age, its edges lined with faint golden symbols that shimmered like dying embers. No title, no markings, just the overwhelming sense that this was important. She reached out. The moment her fingers touched the cover, the torches flared. The flames roared to life, casting deep, twisting shadows across the chamber walls. The air pulsed, thick with magic, and the book Asterisk opened on its own. Pages flipped rapidly, stopping abruptly near the middle. Hermione's breath caught as she stared at the ink scrawled across the aged parchment. It was not written in any language she knew, and yet, somehow, she understood. The banishment of fear. Her fingers trembled. This is it. Theodore was beside her now, scanning the text with sharp eyes. The original spell. Hermione nodded. The one the Ministry used to remove him from existence. Her pulse pounded in her ears. This is how they sealed him away. The runes glowed faintly beneath the text, their energy pulsing, responding to her presence. But something was wrong. The last section of the spell, the final incantation, was missing. Hermione's breath hitched. It's incomplete. Theodore swore under his breath. They erased it. Not lost. Erased. Deliberately removed to asterisk, ensure no one could ever use it again. A deep, slow rumble, rolled through the chamber. The torches flickered wildly, and from somewhere beyond the pillars, the darkness moved. And then a voice. Low, hollow, human. You shouldn't have come here. Hermione's blood turned to ice. She turned sharply. And there, stepping out of the shadows, was a figure. A man, cloaked in deep, dark robes, his hood pulled low over his face. But she could see his eyes, cold, familiar, filled with knowledge he should not have possessed. Theodore tensed. Who the hell are you? The figure tilted his head slightly, studying them with unsettling patience. Then he took another step forward, his voice calm. I am the one who opened the door. Hermione's pulse, stopped. The sigil, the summoning, the one holding the Harbinger's prison open. It was him. She tightened her grip on her wand. Why? The man smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes. Because fear is a prison, and it is time for the world to be free. Hermione's breath caught. He didn't see the Harbinger as a threat. He saw it as liberation. Theodore stepped forward, voice sharp. You have no idea what what you're releasing. The man's gaze flickered to him. And yet, here you are, seeking to undo what should never have been done. The chamber shook. From deep within the darkness, the air trembled, and the presence in the void stirred. The man turned back to Hermione, his voice quiet, knowing. You cannot stop this. Hermione refused to believe that. She took a slow breath, squaring her shoulders. Watch me. And then, the torches went out. # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 7. The chamber plunged into darkness. The sudden absence of light thick and suffocating. Hermione's breath quickened as she raised her wand, the dim glow at its tip barely piercing the void. The presence in the room shifted, unseen but undeniable. From somewhere in the shadows, the cloaked man's voice came, calm and certain. You cannot fight what is already written. Hermione ignored the chill running down her spine. She gripped her wand tighter, her voice steady. Then we'll rewrite it. A low chuckle echoed through the chamber. * foolish girl. Do you think fear can be undone with words? Theodore stepped forward, wand raised, his stance sharp with quiet threat. No, but it can be stopped. His voice was cold, measured, carrying none of the hesitation that had crept into Hermione's bones. He wasn't afraid of this man, ***. He was analyzing him. A faint shift in the air. Hermione didn't see the attack. ***, she felt it. A surge of magic lashed through the darkness, fast as a striking serpent. She barely had time to raise a shield before the energy collided with her barrier, sending sparks crackling through the chamber. The force of it pushed her back, her feet skidding against the marble floor. Theodore moved instantly, his wand slashing through the air as he sent a counter curse toward the unseen enemy. A burst of silver light illuminated the chamber for a fraction of a second. ***, just long enough for Hermione to see the cloaked figure stepping back, untouched. He was toying with them. Theodore swore under his breath, not even trying to dodge. Hermione steadied herself, because he doesn't need to. The torches around them flared weakly, flickering with unnatural shadows. The room itself was changing. The runes carved into the pillars pulsed with energy, shifting in patterns she didn't recognize. The very foundation of the chamber was unstable. The man's voice was almost amused. You still don't understand, do you? Hermione clenched her jaw. Then explain it to us. The shadows around them curled inward. This place was not built to contain the Harbinger. It was built to prepare for his return. A weight settled in Hermione's chest, heavier than before. She looked down at the ancient book resting on the pedestal, its half-erased text glowing faintly beneath her fingertips. This spell wasn't just meant to banish the Harbinger. It had been left behind for someone to ** undo it. Her stomach twisted. The ministry hadn't just sealed the Harbinger away. They had left a way for him to be brought back. And now, centuries later, someone had found it. She turned sharply to the cloaked figure, anger flaring hot beneath her fear. "You're following a plan set by people who are long dead. You think you're doing something powerful, something new, but you're just their puppet. You're just finishing what they were too afraid to do themselves." The air went still. Then a sharp crack. The force of it slammed into her chest like a hammer, sending her crashing backward. Her wand flew from her grip, skidding across the floor. Pain flared in her ribs, but she barely had time to react before Theodore was already moving, his wand cutting through the air in a vicious arc. An roar of magic exploded between them but the figure was gone. Theodore breathed heavily, his stance still defensive, his grip on his wand tight enough to turn his knuckles white. His eyes flickered to Hermione. "Are you?" "I'm fine," she gasped, forcing herself to her feet. The ache in her ribs throbbed, but she pushed past it. "We can't waste time." She grabbed her wand, her fingers curling tightly around the handle. The torches flickered again, casting long shadows against the stone. Something deeper than the cloaked figure was stirring now. Theodore glanced at the runes. "If the spell's incomplete, how do we fix it?" Hermione turned back to the book, scanning the text, her mind racing. The final incantation had been removed, but the foundation of the spell was still here. If she could reconstruct it, if she could find the missing words, then maybe, just maybe, they could close the door before it was too late. She forced herself to focus, her fingers tracing over the faded text. Every spell had a structure, a pattern, and this one was no different. If she could reconstruct what had been erased, the chamber shuddered. A deep, low pulse resonated through the air, vibrating beneath their feet. Theodore tensed beside her. "We're out of time." Hermione's pulse pounded. "We need to sever the sigil's connection to this place. That's the only way to stop it from fully pulling him through." Theodore frowned. "And how exactly do we do that from here?" She turned to him, determination hardening in her eyes. "We don't. We need to get back to Hogwarts." Another pulse, stronger this time. The walls trembled, the runes dimming and flaring like a heartbeat. The Harbinger was coming. Theodore exhaled sharply. "Then we'd better move." They turned toward the far end of the chamber, where a single archway had appeared in the stone. It hadn't been there before, but it was now. An exit, or a trap. Hermione didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward it, Theodore close behind. The magic in the chamber coiled around them, shifting as if trying to decide whether to hold them or let them go. And then, they stepped through. For a brief, agonizing moment, Hermione felt weightless, as if they had been thrown through time itself. And then they were falling. Cold wind rushed past her, the stars blurring overhead as the night swallowed them whole. The forbidden forest loomed below, its twisted branches reaching upward, waiting. They crashed through the canopy, branches snapping around them as gravity pulled them down. Hermione twisted midair, bracing for impact. The ground rushed toward her, and then darkness. 2-2. # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 8. Pain jolted through Hermione's body as she hit the ground, the impact rattling her bones. The world around her was dark and blurred, the cold earth beneath her damp with the chill of the forbidden forest. Her breath came fast, sharp, her ribs aching from the fall. Somewhere nearby, she heard Theodore groan, his landing only slightly more graceful than hers. The weight of the night pressed down upon them, thick with the scent of damp leaves and ancient soil. She forced herself to move, pushing up onto her hands, her wand still clutched tightly in her fingers. The air here was different, wrong. The unnatural heaviness that had filled the hidden chamber beneath the ministry was still here, pressing against the forest like an unseen storm. A few feet away, Theodore rolled onto his knees, exhaling sharply. We're alive, that's something. His voice was tight, but steady. He glanced around, his sharp eyes sweeping over the shadowed trees. But we're running out of time. Hermione followed his gaze. Through the twisted branches above, she could see it, the sigil. It burned into the earth at the center of a clearing, its edges pulsing like molten metal, its lines shifting as though they were alive. The energy radiating from it sent shivers crawling up her spine. This was no ordinary summoning mark. It wasn't just a portal ***, it was a tether. A direct link between this world and the prison they had just escaped. And it was breaking apart. The sigil flickered, its glow unstable, its runes shifting erratically. The connection between the two realms was no longer controlled. It was **, unraveling. Hermione's breath caught. It's pulling him through. Theodore was already moving, stepping toward the clearing, his wand raised. Then we destroy it. Now. But before they could take another step, the shadows moved. A figure emerged from the tree line, stepping into the faint glow of the sigil's burning light. Cloaked, hooded, his presence heavy with the same suffocating magic they had felt in the chamber. The summoner, Hermione's grip on her wand, tightened as the figure stopped at the edge of the sigil, his voice eerily calm. You don't understand what you're interfering with. Theodore let out a sharp breath. Pretty sure we do. The man tilted his head slightly, as if studying them. Then, in a voice thick with certainty, he said, You are afraid. Hermione's pulse stuttered. The way he spoke, not as an accusation, but as a fact, it did something. The air around her grew thick, her heartbeat a fraction too fast, her mind suddenly too aware of the weight of the darkness pressing in. She clenched her teeth, shaking it off. No, this wasn't fear, it was manipulation. He was using the sigil's magic, feeding on the edges of their hesitation, twisting it like a blade beneath the skin. Theodore's voice was steady, cutting through the silence. You think fear is power. The summoner did not deny it. It is the oldest power. It is the foundation of all things, and the Harbinger is its vessel. He lifted a hand, and the sigil flared violently, sending a shockwave through the air that made the ground tremble beneath them. You fight against something that is inevitable. Hermione took a step forward, her wand aimed directly at him. Then, let's make sure it never happens. Theodore moved beside her, his stance unwavering. We break the sigil, cut the connection. The summoner's hood shifted slightly. You cannot break what has already begun. The ground beneath the sigil *** split. A deep, jagged crack tore through the earth, and from within its depths, *** presence began to rise. The air turned ice cold. A slow, pulsing energy rippled outward, pressing against Hermione's chest, making it harder to breathe. The sigil's glow burned brighter, no longer just flickering, but growing. The connection was nearly complete, and then, the whisper came, not from the summoner, from the void itself. You have already failed. Theodore moved first. Like hell we have. He slashed his wand through the air, sending a shockwave of magic toward the sigil. The energy collided with the burning lines, and for a moment, the sigil flickered ***, but did not break. The summoner exhaled, almost disappointed. You cannot destroy it with force. Hermione's mind raced. The sigil was tied to the Harbinger. But it was also tied to the summoner. If they couldn't break the sigil directly, ***, then they had to break him. She turned sharply to Theodore. Don't attack the sigil. Attack him. Theodore didn't hesitate. His wand flicked upward, and a jet of silver energy lashed toward the summoner. But before it could strike, the man * lifted his hand, and * stopped the spell midair. The magic froze, hovering just inches from his palm, twisting and coiling like a living thing. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he sent it * hurtling back. Theodore barely dodged in time. The spell shattered against a tree, leaving the bark scorched and smoking. The summoner sighed. You are persistent, but it is useless. Hermione's thoughts blurred together in frantic calculation. He was stronger than them, ***, far stronger. But that didn't mean he was invincible. Everyone has limits. She turned back to the sigil, her mind working through every spell, every theory, every bit of magic she had ever studied. If the sigil was a connection, then it had to be maintained. What happened if it was turned against him? Her breath hitched. That's it. She looked at Theodore. We don't break the sigil. She turned back toward the summoner, eyes sharp. We reverse it. For the first time, the summoner hesitated. Hermione lifted her wand, channeling magic toward the shifting lines of the sigil. Not to destroy it, but to asterisk change it. She reached into its energy, past the surface magic, into the deeper layers of what bound it to the Harbinger. She felt it immediately, asterisk the link. A connection stretched between the sigil, the void, and the summoner standing before them. He wasn't just asterisk casting the spell. He was asterisk part of it. Her heart pounded. Theodore, asterisk hit the sigil now. He understood instantly. He spun, wand slashing downward, and a burst of raw energy collided with the burning runes. This time, the sigil did not resist. It turned against its creator. The summoner gasped, staggering back as the sigil's light lashed out at him. The connection that had tethered the Harbinger to this world twisted, reversed, asterisk, and began pulling him in instead. No, the man whispered, his voice breaking. You don't understand. Asterisk, he must be freed. The ground trembled violently. The sigil's glow pulsed erratically, flickering between burning gold and consuming black. The air cracked with unseen force, and then, asterisk, the summoner screamed. The sigil collapsed inward, its energy surging up in a final, violent pulse. The figure of the summoner was dragged downward, the shadows curling around him. Asterisk pulling him into the abyss he had tried to open. A single, shuddering breath, asterisk, and he was gone. The sigil asterisk died. The glow snuffed out. The earth went still, and the forbidden forest fell silent once more. # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 9. The silence that followed was asterisk deafening. The sigil, once a pulsing wound in the earth, was now nothing more than scorched soil and cold ash. The energy that had stretched between worlds, asterisk gone. The summoner had been swallowed by the very magic he had unleashed, his presence erased in an instant. And yet, Hermione could still feel it, asterisk, a lingering unease, a weight pressing against her ribs. She turned, her breath coming fast, the cool night air sharp in her lungs. Theodore stood beside her, his wand still raised, his expression carved from stone. His chest rose and fell in slow, measured breaths, his mind calculating, assessing, waiting. Hermione swallowed hard. Did we do it? Theodore didn't answer right away. His gaze flickered to the broken sigil, to the jagged crack still running through the soil. Then, slowly, he exhaled. It's not over. A cold chill crawled up Hermione's spine. She didn't want to ask, but she already knew. The sigil is broken. The summoner is gone. What else is there? Theodore's jaw tightened. He was holding the door open. His voice was quiet, but heavy. But something else was on the other side, and it was already waking up. Hermione's pulse stuttered. The Harbinger. The realization hit her like a crashing wave. They hadn't sealed him away. They had only severed the link to the summoner. The *** door was still open, *** hanging there, untethered, unfinished, waiting for something else to claim it. A *** low hum resonated through the air. Theodore stiffened. Hermione felt her breath catch. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A vibration beneath their feet, a whisper curling at the edges of the night, a presence that had not yet stepped through, but was ** watching. The voice that followed was not like before. It was not inside their minds, not a whisper from the void. It was here. You have delayed me. Hermione turned sharply toward the broken sigil, her heart hammering against her ribs. The crack in the earth was no longer empty. Something was ** standing there, a shadow with no true form, a figure wrapped in the very essence of night, its shape shifting with every flicker of torchlight, never quite solid, never quite real. And yet, its presence was suffocating, pressing against the world like an unbearable weight. Two * burning red slits where eyes should have been. The harbinger of fear had arrived. Hermione's breath hitched. Theodore didn't move, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the slow curl of his fingers around his wand. A fight here, ***, now ****, would be *** suicide. The harbinger took a slow step forward. The ground beneath it withered with its touch, the grass shriveling, the very air ** growing colder. Hermione's pulse pounded. It was real now. It had stepped through, and it was looking directly at them. The voice came again, hollow, ancient. You think you have won. Hermione forced herself to steady her breath. We stopped your summoner. The harbinger tilted its head slightly. A vessel is easily replaced. A sharp ***, chill ***, crawled down Hermione's spine. Theodore finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. You were locked away for a reason. The harbinger did not blink. And now I am not. Hermione's mind raced. They couldn't fight this. Not yet. The sigil was broken, but the harbinger had already used it to step through. They had stopped the summoner's plan, ***, but they had been too late to prevent this. She turned to Theodore. We need to get out of here. Now. Theodore hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. Agreed. They moved at the same time. Hermione spun on her heel, gripping Theodore's wrist, and disapparated. The world twisted. The night blurred around them, cold and crushing as space bent to their will. And then, ***, they landed. The stone floors of Hogwarts, * crushed up beneath them. Hermione stumbled, barely catching herself against the wall of the castle corridor, her breath ragged. Theodore landed beside her, his wand still raised, his entire body coiled with tension. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air here was ** still. No pulsing energy, no unnatural weight pressing against their lungs. The asterisk forbidden forest was behind them. The Harbinger, asterisk, was not. Hermione forced herself to stand straight. Did we just leave a literal nightmare standing in the middle of the woods? Theodore let out a sharp breath. Looks like it. She ran a hand through her tangled hair, her fingers shaking slightly. They were alive, but they had not won. They had only survived. A heavy silence settled between them before Theodore finally spoke, his voice low. It's out now. Hermione exhaled, her chest tight. I know. There was no sealing it away, no revering what had been done. The Harbinger asterisk was in this world now, and somewhere in the dark, it was waiting. Hash, you said. Next, hash, ChatGPT said. Part 10. The stillness inside Hogwarts was almost suffocating. Hermione leaned against the cold stone wall of the corridor, her breath steadying, but her mind still spinning. Theodore stood beside her, his wand still in his grip, his knuckles white. They had escaped, but the Harbinger had not been stopped. The torches lining the hallway flickered weakly, casting long shadows against the walls. Everything felt too quiet, too normal, as if the events of the past hours had not just shaken the very foundation of magic itself. Hermione's voice was barely above a whisper. What do we do now? Theodore didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the floor, deep in thought, his brows furrowed. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but edged with something sharp. We regroup. Hermione turned to him. Regroup. Theodore nodded. This isn't something we can handle alone. The Harbinger is out there, and we don't know what it wants yet. But if it asterisk wanted asterisk to kill us, it would have. It didn't. His gaze lifted to meet hers. That means it's waiting. A chill ran down Hermione's spine. Waiting for what? She swallowed hard. We need to warn the others. McGonagall, the Ministry. They have to know what happened. Theodore exhaled slowly. They'll try to contain it. She nodded. They have to try. Theodore didn't argue, but his silence spoke volumes. The Harbinger had been sealed away once before, and even that hadn't lasted forever. A soft rustling echoed from further down the corridor. Both of them turned sharply, wands raised. Venez, the centaur, stood at the edge of the torchlight, his silver mane glistening in the dim glow, his sharp eyes unreadable. He took a slow step forward, his presence commanding, ancient. You have returned. Hermione lowered her wand, tension still humming beneath her skin. Barely. Venez studied them for a long moment, his expression grim. The stars warned us of a shadow that would walk once more. His deep voice resonated through the hall. Tell me, has it begun? Hermione's stomach twisted. Yes. A heavy silence settled between them. The centaur's gaze darkened, the weight of centuries reflected in his eyes. Then the world will tremble. Theodore exhaled sharply. Not if if we stop it first?" Fenez's expression did not change. "You cannot stop what has already stepped through the veil." Hermione forced herself to remain steady. "Then we asterisk contain asterisk it." Fenez regarded her carefully, as if measuring the truth in her words. "Containment will not last forever." She knew that, but it had to last long enough. The centaur stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There is something you must understand. Fear is not a thing that can be killed. It does not weaken, it only shifts." His sharp gaze met Hermione's. "And the Harbinger is fear itself." Hermione swallowed. "Then what do we do?" Fenez was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice like distant thunder. "We prepare." A cold weight settled over Hermione's chest. The Harbinger was asterisk awake. It had stepped through the threshold of its prison, and now it was watching. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning.